All right, we are starting the recording. I wonder in the FSA office if you have your speakers on. We're getting a little feedback. So if you could maybe check that. I'm hearing myself. For the rest of you, I'm putting up a couple of polls here just to find out a little about you. And so if you could just go ahead and click on those and give us an idea of who we have on. We have about 55 people that there are 55 different computers that are on as of right now, and probably some with groups there. So give us an idea of who you are. We'll let that go for a little while. And I don't hear any feedback now, so I think we're in good shape. And it looks like we've pretty well there. We've got a couple more coming in. Go ahead and click on that. I'm going to close that before too long, but you can all see kind of what we have going on there. Pretty good range with most of the folks in Kansas here. All right, last call on that. Still clicking a little bit. And I'll go ahead and close that and close the other one. Take a final look. You can kind of see who else is here. And with that, Robin, you are on. So I'm going to move that to the side, and I'm off.
Okay, thank you, Rich, and thank you for doing that poll just to see who we have out there, and that'll change a little bit what I'm focusing on, so thank you for doing that. I want to say thank you before we get started to the Kansas FSA State Office. Rod Winkler and Jean Kuntz-Peterson are on with us today, and they're going to be helping at the end. If you do have questions, you're welcome to type them in the chat on the left side of your screen. I'll be kind of glancing at those as we go through, but I'll be answering most of them at the end, and the State FSA office will help too on the technical aspects of the program sign up and administration. So feel free to type them in at any time. I'm going to try to do the program in about 40 to 45 minutes today, and then we will answer questions until we get through with them. So just to kind of start off here, as Rich said, I'm new to the department, so I want to give you a little background on who I am and why I'm talking about dairy. I'm actually a native of Wisconsin, and as you can see in the pictures here, this is our family farm. We bought it from my grandparents when I was 6 years old. We didn't run it as a dairy, but we raised replacement heifers and then Holstein steers. So I grew up with a lot of black and white and orange. As you can see the picture here, my dad and my little brother, one of the cornerstones of our operation are our Alice Chalmers tractors. So, and then the little gal with the tomboy haircut is me with my first heifer calf Milky Way, and I thought it was respectable for every cow to know how to lead. So there's me with my replacement heifer there. I went to school, fast forward a few years, I went to school at University of Wisconsin River Falls and at agribusiness program there. I worked on a couple dairies to supplement my college career while I was there, so I had definitely quite a few years milking cows throughout my college years, and after that the K-State program for agricultural economics kind of brought me here to Kansas. I graduated in 2010 with a master's in agricultural economics, and after that for 4 years I've been an extension agent in the River Valley District, which is Cloud, Clay, Republic, and Washington counties. So as Rich said, just a couple months ago I moved back to an extension associate position here in the Department of Agricultural Economics, and I've been working pretty much exclusively since then with Dr. Art Barnaby and Dr. Michael Taylor on Farm Bill education. And since my background was in dairy, the program for the Farm Bill here has fallen kind of to me for education. So now that you know a little bit of who you're listening to, we'll go ahead and dive into the program here. And as you all know, we're talking about the Dairy Margin Protection Program. I'm going to start pretty basic here. I know a lot of you are probably familiar with things, but just so we're on the same page, make sure we start out with the basics. Looks like audio's in and out in Sedgwick County. Can everybody else hear me okay? Okay, I'll keep going then. So the Dairy Margin Protection Program, commonly known as MPP Dairy, is voluntary risk management program through the Farm Service Agency. You don't have to participate. It's just a risk management option that's out there for your operation. And what it does is it's more of an insurance product. It'll protect from unfavorable margins between the price of milk and the cost of feed inputs. And we'll dive into that calculation in a little bit. But if you look at our farm management guides and our budgets on a dairy operation, feed cost makes up roughly 50% of your total cost of production. And between the price of milk and these feed inputs, that's really the highest uncertainty in a dairy operation. So this program really does a decent job of protecting that risk. Coverage is based on a calendar year, and it's paid in 2-month intervals. And that way there's not a huge lag time between when the unfavorable conditions are experienced by the operation and when the payments are made. And another advantage, you're not looking at a whole year's worth of prices and averaging them together to see a loss. It's paid in 2-month intervals. And this replaces the Milk Income Loss Program, the MILC, of the 2008 Farm Bill. As many of you know, there were some limitations for farms over 126 cows. So this program's a little more user-friendly for our larger operations out there, but there are some differences. So this margin that we're going to talk about today, basically it is a national average all milk price, and then the feed costs are subtracted from this. So how that is exactly calculated is that all milk price minus a weighted cost of the National Ag Statistics Service corn price, American Marketing Service soybean meal price from Central Illinois, and the National Ag Statistics Service alfalfa hay. And these are all national prices. And if you wonder why they carry these weights, it's a feed ration equivalent for producing a 100 weight of milk. So 30 pounds of shell corn, 106 pounds of corn silage, almost 15 pounds of soybean meal, and then 27 pounds of alfalfa hay. And this covers not just the cow that's producing the milk, but it should be all of the feed costs to include dry cows, young stock, and hospital animals. So that's where they came up with this formula for this national margin. And just to look at what this margin has done over the past 15 years, you'll see that jagged line representing the 2-month intervals, and I put the margin on the top there just so you kind of remember, keep that in your mind, the all milk price minus those feed costs. And as you can see, it's been quite variable over the last 15 years, and even more so in the recent years. And as you can see, the lowest that we've seen is the May-June 2009. That margin was all the way down to almost less than $2.50. Here recently we've seen a pretty good value in the March-April 2014 interval, $13.87. But throughout this time period, the average value for this margin has been around $8.40. So kind of keep that in mind. Obviously, when you're looking at your own operation, there's going to be a basis risk, or the prices that you see nationally are not the prices that you see on your operation. But this is what we have to work with here, and I'll get into a little bit how good it matches the state of Kansas, but keep in mind your individual operation, especially if you're forward contracting and doing some of those other risk measures, is going to look different than what we see nationally. So the Dairy Margin Protection Program is basically a program that creates a floor to this margin where you can insure a certain amount, and then if the actual margin drops below this amount, you'll start to receive payments. So just a little bit on the eligibility for this program. You, at the time of sign up, need to produce milk from cows in the U.S. that's marketed commercially. You need to be a U.S. citizen or hold a green card. And actively engaged in the operation. This is actually defined by contributing inputs to the operation and sharing risk in the operation. Conservation compliance is something we've seen kind of across the board this year, or with the 2014 Farm Bill. For the FSA programs, this is the highly erodible land wetlands conservation certification, so you need to meet those to be eligible for payments out of the MPP dairy program. And then finally, you cannot be enrolled in both LGM dairy, which is the livestock gross margin product through RMA, Risk Management Agency, or crop insurance agents, and MPP dairy at the same time. I won't get into this too much today because it's actually a whole topic in itself. It's still a product that's going to be offered out there with this Farm Bill, so the website I have listed there's some materials and presentations that look at both of these programs side by side, and that could be a whole presentation in itself. So I encourage you, if you've used the LGM dairy product in the past or are interested in it, go to the website there or contact me and I'll work you through some examples and compare the two. So basically on this margin, you can insure a coverage level of $4 up to $8 per hundredweight in 50-cent intervals, and then you can insure 25 to 90% of your annual production history. And I'll talk about how that number is determined here in a little bit. But obviously with greater protection comes greater cost. But you can choose any of these levels, so you have actually 126 different combinations that you could put together with this program. So how much does it cost? Well, every year you'll be paying a $100 administrative fee and then a premium. And the premiums are determined on two tiers. Tier 1 is less than 4 million pounds of covered production history. And remember, the highest percent you can do is 90%. So this is roughly around 200 cows. A lot of our operations will be falling in Tier 2, which is over 4 million pounds production history. So as you look at this graph, a couple things stand out, or this table. At the $4 coverage level, there is no additional premium. So we'll call that catastrophic or CAT coverage. What that means is you pay your $100 administrative fee for the year and you have $4 coverage. Now as you go up from that, and these are in dollars per hundredweight, you see it obviously gets more expensive with each coverage level. For a Tier 1 producer, a pretty reasonable coverage level, $6.50, has less than a 10% per hundredweight premium. And even for 2014 and 2015, those premiums have been discounted by 25%, except for the $8 level. If you're a larger operation and most of your milk is going to be in Tier 2, this $5.50 level is pretty reasonable coverage for 10 cents per hundredweight. So if we look at this kind of on a bar chart, you'll see the yellow line is the Tier 1, first 4 million pounds of production history. And you can see it relative to Tier 2, it's fairly cheap for one thing, but there again, that $6.50 coverage is pretty reasonable, and then it starts increasing quite readily from there. With Tier 2, you can see a huge jump in that $6.50 coverage. I think it was meant to deter a lot of our dairies from signing up for the higher coverage and seeing really huge payments in our unfavorable years. So when we look at kind of a whole picture, what does this cost for a year? If we're a 200-cow dairy, so all of our production is in Tier 1, you can see at $4.50 coverage, and this does not include the administrative fee, so you tack on $100 for that. But $4.50 coverage, $360 a year, $6.50 coverage, $3,240, $7.50 coverage is almost $11,000 for the year. Now if you're looking at a 1,000-cow dairy at 90% of your production history, here the $4.50 coverage looks pretty cheap. $6.50 we're getting almost up to $50,000 a year, and then that $7.50 coverage really jumps up to almost $180,000 a year. So this higher coverage can get quite expensive, but it will pay more often. So what we really need to look at is the net benefit, or how much is the program going to pay out versus, or how much do we expect it to pay out versus the premium cost that we're paying in. So we're going to get into that quite a bit later on here. So just to kind of go back to this graph of what this actual dairy margin has done in the last 15 years, if we put the $8 level on there, you can see this does trigger a payment in a significant number of years. And if you look at 2009 alone, it'd be paying over $4 per hundredweight to that producer with that historically low margin. We'd also see pretty significant payments in 2012 and 2013. Now at the $6 level, you can see it obviously drops the number of times it triggers quite a bit, and then your payments also go down. Your payments again are the difference between your coverage level and what the margin level, actual margin level is at. So in 2009 here we're still seeing $2 per hundredweight support payments, and this would still go a long way to helping your bottom line in these tough economic times. Now if we look at the $4 level, and again this is the catastrophic coverage level, it's the $100 administrative fee with no additional premium. As you can see, it doesn't offer a huge amount of support. At the lowest level here in May-June 2009, you'll see $1.50 per hundredweight payments, but that was only for a one interval. The other times you see the payments are less than $1. So the bottom line is you kind of get what you pay for. The catastrophic coverage is very cheap, and it establishes a very low price floor, but things really have to go south for that program to do a whole lot of good, and even then the payments aren't going to be real large. So as I said before, and this is just an example of how this is done, the payments are made every 2 months. So here for 2012 you can see what the margin was in January and February. It came down quite a bit in February, and our 2-month average then became $6.62. Now if you look at the two coverage level columns here, a $4 coverage level wouldn't have triggered a payment, and either would a $6.50, even though that February number was lower than our coverage level. When it got averaged in the 2-month interval, it did not trigger a payment. As we dropped lower in our margin in 2012, you can see for May-June, we're starting to trigger payments at both the $4 and the $6.50 level, but $3 per hundredweight at the $6.50 level definitely goes a lot longer in helping your bottom line than that $4 level. And then throughout 2012, we did see payment or margin come up again, so our payments quit triggering. So just to run through one of those calculations, again, our payment is calculated based on the coverage level that we select minus what the actual dairy production margin is doing in that 2-month interval. Now, if the dairy margin is above the coverage level, obviously no payments are triggered. So to run through an example here, if we selected a $6 coverage level and the margin was actually at $5.40, we'd be seeing a $60 per hundredweight payment. Now it's going to pay, multiplied this payment level by the coverage production history that you choose, divided by 6 months, because these payments are made every 2 months. So an example, if we had a 7 million pound production history, we decided to insure 75% of it. We'll take that divided by 6 months, because we're getting a payment every 2 months. We come up with 875,000 pounds. Change that to a per hundredweight level and multiply that by our 60-cent per hundredweight payment. For this 2-month interval, our operation would be seeing $5,250 in payout if the margin dropped to $5.40. And there's no limits to the size of the operation or adjusted gross income with this program. So even a large operation, if they were insuring at this level, the payment would not cap out. Okay, I've talked about production history quite a bit, but I've not defined it yet. So This is a lot like establishing base acres in our crop programs. It's going to be used to calculate all the future MPP dairy payments. Now, if you're an established operation, it's going to look at your highest total milk marketings for the calendar years of 2011, 2012, and 2013. Now, if you're a new operation, and that's defined with less than 12 months of milk marketings as of February 7th, 2014, and that was the day the Farm Bill was signed, is why it looks at that date. So if you started less than 12 months from there, you're not going to have that production history to look at. So the two options are using your full months of milk marketing extrapolated to a yearly number with a national index, or taking your herd size multiplied by a national average production per cow, which for 2014-2015 is 21,822 pounds. Now, when you sign up, there's also going to be a production bump in some years, and that's to reflect national increases in the average productivity per cow. So if you sign up for 2015 coverage, it's actually been announced already there's going to be a 0.87% bump in production history. So once you have your production history established, changes in herd size are not going to change this number. This is what you'll decide the percentage on that you're going to insure, and going forward, that is what you'll have to work with. Now, you can enroll every year, but once you elect to participate in this program, you're going to be locked in for at least the catastrophic level for the life of the Farm Bill. And again, that catastrophic level was the $4 margin with no additional premiums, just the $100 administrative fee each year. Now, when we talk the life of the Farm Bill, that should be through December 31st of 2018. But as we all know, with this last Farm Bill, there's a good chance of extension beyond that if they can't renegotiate a new one for after 2018. Now, if there's a retirement, death, or discontinuation of the business, you must notify the Farm Service Agency and they will terminate the program. But the biggest thing, or opportunity with this program, is you can change your margin level and your coverage percent every year. Unlike the crop programs, the price loss coverage, and the agricultural risk coverage that we're working with, once you choose those programs, you're locked in for 5 years and there's no opportunity to change. So this program really offers some flexibility that we can see what the markets are doing and adjust our coverage accordingly. Now, our timeline for registration, as you know, for this year is going to end November 28th. 2014 coverage actually started the 1st of September, so it'll be retroactive back until the 1st of September and then run through the end of December. The margin looks pretty good right now, and since you have till the end of November to sign up, you really only have 1 month of risk. I'm not sure 2014 we'll see a lot of interest in sign up there, but 2015 you're going to be selecting your coverage level in this sign up period as well. Now, I don't know, we'll say for our FSA friends out there, November 28th is actually Black Friday. So it might be a good day to find some good deals at the department stores, but it's probably not the best day to go down to your FSA office and shop for MPP coverage. So if you're thinking about participating in this program, I would encourage you to do it before you carve that turkey at the end of November. For the years, for the remaining years of the Farm Bill, the sign-up period is going to start the beginning of July and run through the end of September. So you're going to have to look at the margin and the predicted markets and make your selection levels for the following year in that summer time period. So just kind of remember that too as we're going through some of the economics. The administrative fee and premium is either due 100% by the end of the coverage period, or you can pay at least 25% before February 1st of the coverage year, and then the remaining 75% by June 1st. And if there were any payments that were going to be made by the program to you before you paid that remaining balance, they would automatically be deducted from your remaining premium balance before they're paid to you. Now, this is a national margin, but I looked at how well does it reflect Kansas in general. And again, this still isn't reflective of your individual operation, but as a whole, Kansas has done pretty well to reflect this national margin. And this is national ag statistic prices on alfalfa, corn, and the all milk price for Kansas. Soybean meal from Kansas City, Missouri was pretty much exact on what it was in central Illinois, so that doesn't offer much variability there. But as you can see, we've actually been a little favorable to the national margin until recent years, and then we've matched it pretty closely. So let's get into some of the economics of how you might make the selection decision. And really the best way to do that is look back in history and say, if this program would have been in place, what would have the profit maximizing situation be, or how would I cover the most risk on my operation? So I'm going through a little exercise here, and this is based on 175 cows. So they're all going to be in Tier 1 premium level. And you see here in 2010, it was actually a very favorable margin year. The first line here is the participant cost, or the premium for the different coverage levels. Our second line is the payment that would have been received in that year had this program been in place. And then the net benefit takes the payment minus the premium or participant cost to see what was the net benefit of that coverage level for 2010. So as you see here, there was some small payments made at the $7.50 and $8 coverage level, but really the profit maximizing situation here would have been at the catastrophic level, just the $100 administrative fee for that year. In 2011, it's kind of the same story. There was a little bit of payments made at the $8 level, but net benefits are still the best at the $100 administrative fee level. Now as we get into 2012, obviously this was an unfavorable year, and you can see we're starting to see payments that are made. So in this situation, our biggest net benefit actually comes at that $8 coverage level. Even though you see our premiums are over $17,000, we're seeing payouts of $96,000. So we see a pretty big net benefit at that level. And in 2013, we can see this as well. Our margin didn't get low enough to trigger payments below the $6 margin level. But again, our profit maximizing situation in this year would have been at that $8 coverage level. So if we aggregate this over the last 10 years for this size of operation, if we picked the optimal strategy each year to maximize those net benefits, what you'll see quite quickly is it's kind of an all or nothing strategy. For the years that the margin's favorable, the $4 coverage level is your profit maximizer. For the unfavorable conditions, the $8 level is where you're maximizing profits. So in 10 years' time, this program would have paid this operation over $200,000, which comes out to be about 56 cents per hundredweight. Now, we don't have perfect market information when we're signing up the summer before our coverage level actually kicks in. So we can't really employ the optimal strategy. But what we can do is look at an advanced strategy. And I'm going to run through a tool that was developed. It's a web tool that's accessible to everyone out there, that you can look at your individual operation and see what is the advanced strategy for the coming year. So if we used that tool and did what it predicted, you can see here we'd have different coverage levels in a number of years. We'd be paying some hefty premiums in some years, especially here 2011 of $16,000. Obviously the tool predicted an unfavorable margin, but it turned out to be a pretty good year. But still, when you aggregate all those together, you're seeing a total of almost $150,000 in payments over this 10-year span, which comes out to be about 37 cents per hundredweight. Now, if we just picked risk strategy, we like the 650 coverage level. Again, that was the one that was about 10 cents per hundredweight for our premium. We're paying a little over $3,000 in premiums for the years that we didn't kick in payments, but the years that payments did start when we had the unfavorable margins, it made up for this premium pretty quickly. So in total, $115,000 were paid out to this operation had this program been in place for the last 10 years, and that equals about 29 cents per hundredweight. So remember, this is a Tier 1 example. I'll show a little summary on Tier 2 towards the end of the presentation. So just keep in mind, with the higher premiums in Tier 2, this would definitely alter these economics a little bit. So to jump into the decision tool here, this is actually available on the FSA USDA website. It's also available on this website called dairymarkets.org, and it was put together by 7 different universities which receive money from this Farm Bill funding to help producers decide what program they should sign up for. So I'm going to go through some screenshots of that program, or the tool here, and just kind of give you a feel for how to use it. And then I encourage you to go to these websites and put in your own numbers and play around with it some more. So when you open up the tool, it's going to come up with this standard disclaimer. You can just click this agree button. See if I can get my pointer working here to get into the tool. This is a web-based tool, so you're not able to store your results that come out of here, but it also isn't going to be collecting your data and storing it somewhere else. So it is very safe to use. Don't worry about your information getting out. And really, there's only one number that you need to put in here for your own operation to look at a scenario, and that's your production history here. So for our example, I put in 11,000 pounds, which is about 500 cows or so. Sorry, 11 million pounds, 500 cows or so. So we're going to have some Tier 1 and Tier 2 premiums, and then I just named this the Kansas Dairy. So these are really the only two inputs that you need to put in here, and it'll start running this analysis for you. It defaults to 2015. You can see up here in coverage year, and then it's going to display this graph. And what this is the prediction of what that margin will be doing throughout 2015. So as you can see, we have pretty favorable conditions here in fall of 2014, early winter, but it's predicted to start coming down. Now the green band is, the black band is the absolute what they think the margin's going to do. But obviously there's a lot of uncertainty around predictions going out, especially a year into the future. So the green band is 25% probability. It's going to be above that black line. The red band is 25% probability it'll be below that black line. But also keep in mind there's another 25% chance it's going to be here above the green or here below the red. And then this blue shaded area reflects what you can cover with the MPP dairy program. So it starts at that $8 coverage level and makes payments below that. Now you'll see the band gets wider as we go out into the future, again reflecting the more uncertainty that's going to happen out here as we go further on. So markets are predicted to be pretty good this year, but I'll show you next. We're going to go, we have it checked on this forecast graph here. We're going to go to this probability table. So here it gives you the same information, just instead of a picture it gives you numbers to it. This first column is the expected margin throughout these intervals, and again it's made in 2-month interval payments, so that's why they're here reflected in that. So if you look at it, even at the $8 coverage level, we're predicted to be above that for the next year. But down here you can see the probabilities that the margin will be below that. So for example, if we look at March, April 2015 here, there's a 17% chance of getting a payment if you selected that $8 coverage level. Now 2015 looks to be a pretty favorable year. You can go back and look at coverage years back to 2008 and see what it said for the probabilities then of payments, and you'll see 2012, 2013, obviously the probabilities are quite a bit higher when it predicted the unfavorable margins. So from here you can go to this Select Coverage tab, and it will tell you what your premiums will be for these for 2015. And again, this is reflective of what you put in here as your actual production history. You can click this down arrow right here and change your coverage level. I have it set at 90%. Again, you can change that down to 25% of your production history or anywhere in between in 5% intervals. So our administrative fees here in the first column, obviously more coverage means more premium, and our example here is both some in Tier 1 and Tier 2. There is some expected payment in here in the second column, and that's reflective of those probabilities that we just looked at. So there's a small chance of payments, but when you go here to expected net revenue, you see for 2015 this tool is kind of indicating your net benefit would be greatest at the catastrophic level. So does that mean that you necessarily don't want to participate? Not necessarily, because obviously there's still variability around what this tool predicts. If we have another drought or other events that could alter the marketing dynamics, there's definitely things that could happen that wouldn't be completely reflected in this tool. So that 10 cents per hundredweight premium level, if you're 650 in Tier 1 or 550 in Tier 2, is still something to look at. Now if we select a coverage level, so let's say 550, since we have quite a bit of milk marketing in Tier 2, this button will actually pop up where you can download the FSA Election Forms, and it'll populate them with the information that you select here, and you can finish filling them out and take them into the Farm Service Agency office. So this is what those two forms look like. You have a form here that you will elect to participate in the program. You'll establish your production history. You only need to do that once during the Farm Bill, and again, once you do that, then you are in the program at least through December 2018 or the life of the Farm Bill. But every year you fill out this 782 form again, and you can change what coverage levels that you want for the next year. So you're doing this in the summer before the coverage year that you're selecting. So you'd bring both of these into the FSA before you eat your turkey, and they will help you to get signed up. Now, the first thing that I'm sure is on everybody's mind when they look at this tool is, how accurate is this thing? So you can go back, like I said, here I got 2008 selected, and there's this button that says Include Actual Margin. So this blue line down here shows what did that margin actually do versus what this tool predicted. And again, this tool is predicting this margin the summer before it actually occurs, and then it's static. It doesn't change it for market conditions. So here in 2008, you might see a resemblance to what's being predicted for 2015. But our actual margin in 2008 came in a little bit lower than the interval, or than the 25% probability on the red side predicted. So we still would have seen a little bit of payment here at the $8 level, but in general the tool did pretty well. Now let's look at 2009. The tool predicted a pretty unfavorable year, but including the actual margin here, we saw it quite a bit below what the tool predicted. And so I'd say a lot of times this tool does a pretty good job of catching kind of what in general the market might do for the coming year, but sometimes the magnitude is missed. So we see that here. If we go to 2010, you know, it's pretty reflective in this year. We kind of climbed out of that low margin into a halfway decent margin up here, but our actual production line kind of bounced around within that graph. So just go on the website for this and play with this tool a little bit. Put in your own production history to look at what your premiums might be, and just get familiar with using this. It is a really good tool to work with. So kind of in summary, just to talk some general terms here, we went through kind of a whole scenario on this. Basically, long term, if you chose a coverage level and stuck with it, in the last 15 years, you would have still seen positive net benefit total with this program. Not a whole lot at these smaller levels, 5 cents per hundredweight, 7 cents per hundredweight. Profit maximizing situation is up to 25 cents when we get in these higher coverage levels. If we look at the most recent 8 years, you see about 55 cents per hundredweight. But if you look in 2009 alone, one of those really bad coverage years, our $8 coverage level is paying almost $3 per hundredweight, which would go a long way to help your operation. And I should mention, I think I forgot to in that sign-up slide, you don't have to sign up for coverage this year. You can elect to participate in any of the coming years of the Farm Bill as long as you make that sign-up window beginning of June through the end of September. Now, you'll still have your production history based on your marketing from 2011, 12, or 13, but you can still elect to enroll any time through the life of this Farm Bill. It's not once you sign up or don't this year, you're either in or out. You do have that decision going forward. Now, for some of our larger operations, here is a 60 million pound production history aggregate example. So we're looking at somewhere 2,700 cows or so with this. And as you can see, as a difference to our smaller dairies, long term, our net benefits at these higher coverage levels are negative. And even our profit maximizing situation here at $5 is only giving us 8 cents per hundredweight throughout that time period. So that doesn't seem like much. Here more recently, though, with more variability in our margin, we're seeing a little bit more support here at these higher levels. And then again, in that really unfavorable year, these $2 per hundredweight payments on this large of a dairy would really add up quite quickly. So this is a really good risk management program, but I don't market it as a replacement for a lot of the risk management things that are out there that are options for you already. Hedging milk, hedging corn or soybean meal, options to establishing a floor price on your milk, or a call for a floor or price ceiling on corn and soybean meal, forward contracting. You know, there's a number of options that'll work kind of along with the MPP dairy program. I mentioned a little bit on the LGM dairy, but this is a product through Risk Management Agency. If you participate in that, you can't participate in MPP. You can sign up for coverage through LGM Dairy next year, and when that expires, then you can be put into the MPP Dairy program. But that is just in the transitional process for 2015. If doing nothing on your operation for risk management, the MPP Dairy program is a really pretty simple, easy way to start. Even if you do the $4 catastrophic coverage level, $100 or administrative fee a year really is not much at all. But again, that $4 is a very catastrophic program. The payments, as throughout history, have not been triggered very much at all. So what will the program do for you? Basically, it's provide significant risk management in extreme downturn events. So when we saw in 2009 how bad that margin got, payments add up quite quickly in those years. Now, in the long run, we're expected to see positive value from this program, and we've seen that throughout history if it had been in place in prior years. Yet, this Farm Bill is only running through 2018, possibly beyond, so are 4 years enough to see a long-term positive value? That's really going to depend on the markets. If we're looking at our feed costs, our corn, soybean meal, prices are predicted to be pretty low relatively for the next 4 or 5 years. So are we going to see that unfavorable of a margin? That's going to, we'll see. Less income risk with more milk in the long run. It's been said quite a bit, if this program had been in place in the past, some operations maybe were able to weather those bad times and we'd have more milk in production, and it might alter those marketing dynamics. And this is definitely something that it is a concern, or something that maybe affects our markets. And there is something in the Farm Bill that kind of addresses this a little bit, and that's the dairy donation program. I know we're getting short on time here, and I'd like to get to questions, but basically when the margin is less than $4 for 2 months, the Secretary can purchase dairy products at the prevailing market prices and distribute those through public and private nonprofit organizations to kind of get rid of that excess supply. So this program may shorten the low margin periods, but just on a dollar level will actually cost more than paying indemnities or making payments on the MPP program. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and start questions here. If you have one, go ahead and type them in the chat box. Rich has also put up a short 2 to 3 minute evaluation. This is kind of one of my debuts as a webinar here from the department, so please feel free to give me feedback, good or bad, or suggestions for future webinars that would help your operation. So we will go through and just start answering questions, and the State FSA office, if you would like to jump in here and answer some too, feel free to do that.
Sure, Robin. This is Gene and Rod. And I know we're getting a little feedback. One of the questions here is, maybe I missed it, but is it subject to the $125,000 cap? And the answer to that is there are no caps with the MPP dairy program. There's no pay limitation. It is risk management. You're paying a premium for the coverage, so there's no $125 subject to cap.
Thank you, Rod. And I guess I'm getting some feedback. There we go. If you want to talk a little bit about Lynn's question there, she's asking if someone wants to start a new dairy in future years. If it is truly a new dairy, they have 90 days that they can enroll in this program, and then the coverage level will start on the next 2-month interval. But Rod, do you want to talk about the affiliation rule a little bit and how that applies to new operations?
Sure, Robin. Yeah, you know, for new operations, there is an affiliation rule, and that basically says if the participant in the original operation owns 50% or more in the new operation, then there is a restriction on creating that new operation. So the affiliation rule essentially is there to protect someone who primarily owns a dairy that's in the program and is expanding into another dairy operation. Did that cover it, Robin?
Yes, I think so. Do you want to answer Mike's question as well?
Okay, Mike's question, is there a maximum amount of premium available from RMA similar to the $20 million on the other programs? And I can't answer that question because I'm not real familiar with the LGM program. So I do not know what RMA rules are.
Okay, sorry, I read that wrong. There is still going to be some... could you mute your mic there? Okay. There is still going to be some restrictions with that risk management product, the LGM Livestock Gross Margin Dairy. It is only sold on the last business Friday of the month. And Mike, you are right. Once that funding runs out, I'm not sure if it's $2 million or what's in there for this farm bill, but once that funding runs out, then it is no longer going to be offered. So, and you won't know that till the end of the month. If the prices come out on that Friday and you can purchase that product, you know, that is one of the risks of that product, is just not knowing if it is going to be available when you want to purchase it. Lee's question is the premium reduced by 25% for both 4 million pounds and over 4 million pounds for 2015-2015. It is actually only for Tier 1. So the first 4 million pounds of covered production history, the premium will be reduced by 25%. And so somewhere around your first 200 cows will get that reduced rate for 2014 and 2015. And remember again, 2014 coverage is really September 1st, 2014 through the end of December 2014. So we're actually getting to the end of that coverage period already. Are there any more questions out there for our state FSA office or myself?
Robin, while we're waiting for more questions, I'd just like to provide a little bit on the enrollment periods. And you mentioned that a producer or dairyman does not have to enroll during these periods, and they can subsequently enroll anytime during the farm bill period, and that is exactly correct. So for the first enrollment period, it's September 2nd through November 28th. And then in the future years, just so everyone is very clear, that period actually changes and runs from July 1 through September 30th. But what I really want to be clear to everyone is once you enroll, then you're in the program through the life of the farm bill and committed to at least the catastrophic coverage. So once you don't have to enroll, you can enroll at any time during the farm bill, but once you enroll, you're in till the end of the farm bill.
Yes, thank you for mentioning that, Rod. I forgot to make that a little more clear when I was talking about this timeline. This one would be a good one for you too, Rod. If the dairy donation program becomes effective, will the county FSA offices be involved in that? My inclination is no, but I will defer that to you.
Yeah, good question. No, the county FSA office will not be involved in the dairy donation program. That's primarily run through the Kansas City Commodity Office. So the county offices will not be involved in the donation.
Okay, it looks like we have a few more questions coming in. And again, Rich Llewellyn has put up that short survey. If you want to run through that afterwards, I'd greatly appreciate your comments on this program. Okay, if you have a question, we'll give it a few more minutes here. We're getting pretty close to 11 o'clock. Is the bump worth the $100, long-term speaking? That's a very good question. I kind of thought about this in a number of different ways. Kind of like base acres, once you're established, you're not going to get any increases. If you're expanding your operation, that's really not going to be captured in your production history once it's established. So a 0.8 per 7-cent bump might be worth the $100 if you are thinking of expansion. Another thing maybe before you make that decision is just to think about, are you wanting to cover 90% of your production history already? Are you trying to maximize what you're going to cover? If you're not worried about covering that high of a percentage, that production bump isn't really going to make that big a difference, because You know, if you were only covering 75% and you're expanding your operation, you could actually jump that up to 90% and cover more production even without getting that bump. So it's kind of up to the individual operation. The tool suggesting for 2015 we're going to have favorable margins, but just jumping in at that catastrophic level will get you that 0.8% bump. Rich, the evaluation links takes you back to the webinar page. Do we have an issue there? Okay, Justin's
Yep,
question.
I'm sorry. I will get the right link here.
Okay, well, let's just hold a minute for Rich to fix that. To clarify, a dairy could elect $8 coverage at 90% in 15, and then the next year drop to $4, or if they wanted to, or drop to $6 at 75. Yes, you can change both your coverage level and your percent of production, production history that you want to ensure every year. So this timeline you see here, the summer before the coverage becomes active, you need to make those selection decisions, and that's with that second form that I had there on display. So yes, Justin, you can change every year. Does a dairy with over 4 million pounds of production get the same premium on the first 4 million? Yes. Your production history, the first 4 million pounds will be premium tier 1, and then anything above and beyond that will pay tier 2. So if you're right on that borderline, don't be worried about falling into tier 2 and having to pay the higher premiums. You go through tier 1 until you exceed the 4 million.
And Robin, just one, this is Rod again. One other point on that, when we're talking about the 4 million level in the premium, so if I have an $8 million production history and I select 50% coverage, then I'm at 4 million. So just because a dairy is above 4 million, it depends upon what production history they want coverage on that determines the premium level.
Yes, thank you very much for clarifying that, Rod. It is based on your percent of covered production history, or your pounds of covered production history. Marshall County, are you wanting to comment again, Rod?
Yes, one other point I want to make is for dairies out there who are considering enrolling in the program, when you come into the FSA office, we're going to need, the first step in this process is determining your production history, and we're going to need your milk marketings for 11, 12, and 13, the actual milk marketings of that, of what was brought in. So that's step one. You don't necessarily have to enroll at that time, but you can come in and determine your production history. It's a separate form to actually do the enrollment. So it's a two-step process.
Okay, then a couple questions here based on a earlier comment. If the farm bill is extended year by year, is the producer locked into participating? I guess that's what we will see in the future. Our other farm bill, as they've made extensions, yes, the producer continued on with whatever program they were signed up for originally. So while I can't say that's for sure going to be the case, because I'm not sure what legislation will do in 2018, I would be inclined to say yes, you probably will still be locked in if the farm bill is extended. And Justin's comment, so once you enroll, you're committed to the $100 minimum going forward, but you can drop that if you want. You actually cannot. You are committing to the $100 administrative fee, $4 catastrophic margin level through 2018 or the end of this farm bill. One other thing, if there's no other questions on that issue, Rod, we might mention too, when you're establishing your production history, you do need to bring in receipts or somehow prove your milk marketings. Is that correct?
That is correct, Robin. That's the point I was trying to make there, is that when you come in for registration or just come in to establish your production history, we need the verifiable production history, your milk marketings for that 3-year period to do that. That is accurate, Robin. Now, back to the point on enrollment and the $100 minimum. So if we're looking at the screen you have up there, Robin, let's say you came in by November 28th to enroll in the 15 year, and you turned in your production history and established that, and you enrolled for 2015. For 2016, you have the right to change your election or make your selection on both what coverage you want and what trigger level you want by September 30th. If you do not make that decision by September 30th, you will automatically get a catastrophic level of coverage at $4 and 90%. And the $100 administrative fee, as Robin stated, is still committed, but you will drop to the catastrophic level. So once you're in, you need to pay close attention to these enrollment periods and make your selections by those dates, because once that date passes, you're locked in at that coverage level.
Okay, last call for questions. And Rod, is there anything that we didn't cover today that I missed that we should be telling our producers and participants out here?
No, you did a great job, Robin. I made three notes during your presentation I want to cover, and I've covered them all in my comments and answers to these questions. Very good job.
Well, thank you, Rod. And it looks like we have one more question that came in here. Do the milk production records of the Dairy Farm America send to FSA counties work as milk marketing? Rod, I'll defer that one to you as well.
Robin, I think what is referred to here in Mandy's question is, do the records I get from Dairy Farmers of America work for FSA requirements for milk marketing? As long as those records are verifiable production records of your milk marketings, then I'm going to say yes, they would.
Okay, so standalone, they're not enough. You still need the actual receipts.
All right, thanks everyone. Appreciate you being involved with this, and I got the correct evaluation form on there. Also Robin's email and her phone if you should need that. And we thank you again.